Hello, everybody. My name's Ian Thomas with America Walks. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's policy roundtable on tribal pedestrian safety. To start, I'd like to invite Holly-Ann Littlebull to make an opening statement on behalf of the indigenous communities of this land.
Good morning. My name is Holly-Ann Littlebull. Shachmaitsky Inknash Wanikshish Koyama Timur Kusu Ilish Kwaflanu Shamash Takwatat Au Shakhiwa Squipa. I'd like to ask for the blessings for this day, for everybody who's here and all the work that we do. And ask that we all stay safe in this coming new year and that our jobs go well, our families are healthy, and that we are safe. Thank you.
Ian, you're muted.
Thank you, Sherry. I was just saying that this policy roundtable on tribal pedestrian safety is funded through a Road to Zero grant awarded to America Walks, Pueblo of Jemez, Cherokee Nation, and other partners by the National Safety Council. I'd like to invite Mark Chung, Executive Vice President with the National Safety Council, to make some opening remarks. Hey, Mark.
Hey, and thank you for this opportunity. What an honor to be with all of you and to be able to share a few words. Like all of you at the National Safety Council, we prioritize data and we prioritize our data-driven approaches in our mission to save lives, whether it's at the workplace or on the roadways or anywhere in between. And the data tells us a clear story that the underserved communities are at a disproportionate risk and they bear a disproportionate burden of roadway fatalities and injuries. And among these disparities, the rise in pedestrian fatalities over the last 15 years has been especially alarming, with Native American populations being particularly affected. So, this project that you all are undertaking is a very worthy and needed endeavor, and we definitely support this through the coalition. And the coalition's annual grant program, and those of us that are, in academia and government industry who are members of the Road to Zero Coalition, all share the same mission, which is to save lives on our roadways. And we have a shared opportunity then to work together to drive meaningful change. I think that, the work that you all are pursuing, as well as other grantees that are pursuing this particular grant year, as well as in the past, I think if all had the same shared mission and shared goal of not only improving their immediate communities, but also sharing the learnings with others so that other communities can benefit and also inspire change that could be positive in terms of life-saving measures. So we are excited to work with America Walks, as well as other grantees this particular grant year. But we have come up on our next grant cycle. So the next grant cycle, the deadline, I'm excited to share that the deadline has been extended for our 2026 grantees. The deadline was January 19th, but I know that many of those in the safety advocacy community simply ran out of time to put together a proposal. So we have extended the grant deadline to January 31st. So if you know of any other safety advocates that could benefit from this project funding and in pursuit of this work, please share the news with those who may be interested in applying. So with that, I'd like to wish all of you the best in the pursuit of this particular important work. And we look forward to our continued dialogue and collaboration and the updates to come. So with that, back over to you, Ian.
Thank you very much, Mark. Now, the mission of America Walks is to provide individuals and organizations from across the country with the resources they need to create safe, walkable communities for people of all ages and abilities. And I'd now like to invite my boss, Mike McGinn, Executive Director of America Walks, to share his thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. And first of all, thanks to the National Safety Council for this grant. We deeply appreciate it. underlying our mission is the belief that everybody should be able to move with dignity and safety within their own communities. And we heard those stats on pedestrian safety and how challenging it is for people without a vehicle, without access to a vehicle to move around. And it's, of course, particularly hard on those of lower incomes. And we know from the data that deaths in tribal and in BIPOC communities are far higher than they are in other communities. So there's tremendous equity issues involved in that. But I also think it's just more fundamental than that, right? Like this is something that all of us, walkability, being able to move around with a mobility assistance device, just being able to have that freedom is so critical to who we are as people. And I think it's something that reaches across boundaries. I got into this work in my own neighborhood, trying to make it safe for me and my kids to walk to the local grocery store. That led me into all sorts of transportation advocacy. I was already doing climate advocacy, and I ended up as the mayor of Seattle. So I'm giving you that lead up because I had the privilege in working in the mayor's office. We hired the first tribal relations director in our intergovernmental relations office. We partnered with the sovereign tribes on things like salmon protection. But in particular, we partnered with tribes in the Pacific Northwest to stop coal trains going through communities with all their adverse health effects. And I mention that for two reasons. One is that I understand the Tulalip are involved. If you are ever invited to the Tulalips to have a seafood feast, attend. I still have visions of that buffet in my head. It was absolutely amazing. But the other reason was it was the particular leadership and strength of the sovereign tribes that enabled us to win that fight. It gave me a deep respect for, again, for that leadership and vision and unique role within our intergovernmental system that the tribes have, and their ability to exercise that made a huge difference. So I'm really, really grateful that in this new job at America Walks, I get to continue that America Walks has been building this relationship. I'm grateful to Ian Thomas. We are here as partners in how do we improve, the dignity, well-being, safety, and quality of life for all. And this grant is extremely important to us, and the work you do is extremely important to us. I'm also mentioned with respect to the National Safety Council comment about a new grant. We're also looking to start incorporating. We're working on incorporating safer vehicles work into local government work. Trucks and vehicles that are owned by public entities are safer, are easier to see people, have safety features embedded within them. So if you're interested in that work, please feel free to reach out to us about that as well. But again, I want to express my gratitude and appreciation for being able to work, that America Walks is able to work with all of you on this. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. I'm going to share my screen as we move into the main content. And want to start by thanking the project team who have worked with me to put this policy roundtable together. And you'll be hearing from many of these folks over the next 3 hours. Sherry Bozick, Director of Planning, Development and Transportation with the Pueblo of Jemez. Hillary Mead, Primary Prevention Program Supervisor with Cherokee Nation Public Health. Maya Pedersen, Assistant Professor with the School of Public and Community Health Sciences at the University of Montana. Samantha Morijo, Physical Therapist with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes. Holly-Anna Littlebull, a Tribal Safety Consultant from Yakima Nation. And Misha Casebeer, President of MG Tech Writing LLC. And I also want to thank my colleague at America Walks, Rachel Kottner, who is managing all of the technical aspects today. And I'm going to start, as unfortunately we need to, with a couple of distressing slides. And you'll be seeing these again a couple of times throughout the policy roundtable today, but this shows the overall number of pedestrian fatalities by year in the United States over the last 12 or 13 years, and it has been rising at a very alarming rate. But even more alarming, to my way of thinking, is when you drill into those numbers and you look at the racial ethnic identity of the people who make up those tragic statistics. And you see, firstly, that Black and African American residents are overrepresented, about twice as many or twice as likely in terms of the ratio to the population, twice as likely to be killed while walking as white non-Hispanic residents, and American Indian Alaska Native residents are 4 times as likely. And that is a statistic that those of us presenting this event have been paying attention to for a number of years. It's getting worse, and it's the overall reason why we're holding this event. So I want to present the goals and agenda and then move into our keynote presentation. So these are the goals that our project team came up with for today's policy roundtable. We want to convene advocates for tribal pedestrian safety to share updates and best practices. We want to establish some advisory groups or interest groups for the Road to Zero grant project, which is behind this event. And the title of that project is Pedestrian Fatalities in Indian Country Responding to a Crisis, funded by National Safety Council's Road to Zero program. We're going to announce details of an in-person event, the Tribal Pedestrian Safety Workshop and Quick Build Demonstration Project in Jemez Pueblo, either very end of April or beginning of May. Those dates will be confirmed soon. You are all invited to attend and participate in these events. It'll be a 2-day program. And we also have some travel stipends available that were built into the grant funding. So if your organization or your tribe is not able to cover travel and lodging costs, then we can help out. And there will be an online application form coming available soon, and you are all on the list to receive information. We want to strengthen relationships with key partners and establish a national coalition that's focused on tribal pedestrian safety. And we also want to start developing a public policy platform with the goal of eliminating pedestrian fatalities in Indian country. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish in the next 2.5 hours or so. And here's kind of a high-level overview of the agenda. We're in the introduction part right now, and we've had the land acknowledgement, opening remarks. We're doing the goals and agenda, and we will wrap up this first part with a keynote presentation from Sherry Bozick. We'll take a short break, and then the second part will be focusing on the grant project that Mark referred to. We're going to give an overview of the project, a calendar of the various activities that we're implementing. And then we'll discuss these advisory or interest groups, which we hope you will consider signing up for. In the registration form that you all completed, we asked which ones you might be interested in, and we were really happy to see such a high level of interest in each of the 4 groups. So we'll be discussing more about what those groups will do, and we will break into breakout rooms, one for each of the 4 groups, and one of them is going to be around community engagement, one around the resource library we're creating, one around the workshops that we're doing, and one around the quick build projects. And for that breakout session, you'll be able to choose which one of those 4 areas you want to go into a breakout room for a discussion. This doesn't commit you to joining that group at this point, but we will be around about the same time that we're putting out the opportunity for travel stipends to Pueblo of Jemez, we will also be asking you to actually sign up for one or more of those breakout rooms, probably next week. We'll take another short break, And then the final part will be focused on this idea of creating a national coalition focused on tribal pedestrian safety. We have a few guest speakers. Adam Larson with the Federal Highway Administration, Tribal Transportation Safety Office. Amy Cohen with Families for Safe Streets. And Pamela Journey with, and I apologize, I don't have the firm that Pamela is with. Oh, almost came back to me for a second there. I'm sorry, Pam, but she will be giving a presentation about a kind of a storyboard. Again, I'm blanking a little bit. She'll be giving a presentation about her project all around complete streets in Indian country. So these are sort of 3 initiatives, 3 projects, 3 agencies that are happening that are very adjacent to the work we want to do, just to sort of expand the thinking about how a national coalition might come together. We'll talk about that concept. We'll talk about some, public policy opportunities, and then we'll have another set of breakout rooms where everyone can share your thoughts, your ideas, your interest in being part of a national coalition. And, critical to that is how much time could you commit to something like this, realizing that everybody is busy. And that will help us design the format and the structure in a way that makes it accessible to everybody. And then we'll just wrap up with some next steps. So what I'd love for you to do now, if you haven't done already, is please introduce yourselves in the chat. Give us your name, your tribe or organization. And if you have any news or updates from your community or from a community you work with relevant to tribal pedestrian safety, whether it's a new program, some outreach or messaging, a new policy, a complete streets policy, or tribal vision 0 policy, or a project, a traffic calming project or a roundabout, protected walk or bikeways, just mention that in the chat. We will be recording all of the chat, and we will be including that in our kind of analysis of what is happening right now or recently in the area of tribal pedestrian safety. While you're doing that, I just want to share a little information about who we all are today. Thanks so much for completing that registration form. This is the kind of compiled responses to the question about which profession or area of interest or community volunteering or activity do you identify with? And we can see here that tribal planning and transportation is right at the top of the list. We have also a great representation from the advocacy world, consulting, state and federal government research, and a number of other categories there. And we also asked you, what do you feel are the main reasons for the high rates of pedestrian fatalities in Indian country? And we offered 6 kind of areas that contribute to this. And we see that the lack of pedestrian infrastructure is considered is regarded as a main reason by almost everybody, as well as road designs which encourage excessive speeds. And those 2 focus our minds on evaluating and then modifying the infrastructure in communities so that there are pedestrian walkways, crosswalks, and there are traffic calming designs which reduce vehicle speeds. Those are the 2 key things that we will emphasize here. We also noted that distracted driving, inadequate enforcement, and speed limits being too high are part of the problem, as well as distracted walking. This is the word cloud that came out of the question Why is tribal pedestrian safety important to you? And I'll just leave that up there. I just put all of the text from all of your responses into the word cloud generator, and this is what it came up with. And I appreciate all of those responses, and we have been reading those as individual responses, and it's informing our work as we go along. So at this point, I would like to introduce Sherry Bozic, Director of Planning, Development, and Transportation with the Pueblo of Jemez in New Mexico, for her presentation. I've stopped sharing the screen, so Sherry, if you would like to share your slides, and it's over to you. Oh, and I will add one other thing, I'm sorry. As we go through, if you have questions for Sherry, if you could please put them in the chat, that would be great. And if we have time, which I think we will, we'll be able to take some of those questions.
Thanks so much, Ian. Can you see my screen? All right, awesome. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined us for this policy roundtable. I'm so excited to see this much participation and quite a few people that I know and have worked with. So thank you for making time to join us today. My name is Sherry Bozic. I am the Director of Planning, Development, and Transportation at the Pueblo of Jemez in sunny New Mexico, although right now it's sunny but freezing. I've been here a little over 10 years. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, and I've worked only for tribes in New Mexico. I've worked for 3 of the Pueblos, and I currently work at the Pueblo of Jemez. I've been here almost 7 years. I do all of the transportation infrastructure. I manage a team of 8 people who are responsible for everything transportation, road maintenance included. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we do in my department in my presentation. But we are very passionate about pedestrian and bicycle safety at the Pueblo of Jemez. And we collaborate with agencies, other tribes, universities to try to make it a safer place to live here at the Pueblo. So thank you, and I'll get going on my presentation. These graphs reveal a worsening pedestrian safety crisis that disproportionately impacts American Indian and Native Alaskan communities and residents of lower income areas. It's also important to acknowledge that inconsistencies in data collection, which vary across states and responding officers, leading to a high likelihood of underreporting. Despite these gaps, the data highlights a profound failure of current transportation policies and roadway design guidelines to protect our nation's most vulnerable populations. The current policies, manuals, and guides fall short in addressing the needs of Indian country. Many rural highways that traverse reservations are high speed and hazardous, often lack critical pedestrian infrastructure and adequate lighting. States must take meaningful action to improve these conditions and ensure the safety and well-being of the country's First Peoples. Decision makers and transportation engineers must abandon outdated practices in roadway design and prioritize pedestrian and bicycle safety. This includes mandating design changes and reducing speeds in areas with clear safety concerns, regardless of documented injury or fatality counts. If community members feel unsafe walking and biking in their neighborhoods, it is a safety issue that demands immediate attention. State and local agencies have the authority to set and enforce speed limits, while engineers rely on tools like the 85th percentile, speed studies, and US limits too. It's imperative to hold decision makers and engineers accountable for addressing the pedestrian safety crisis and reevaluating current roadway design methods. There are issues with some of the major factors used in US limits too to guide engineering judgments for determining speed limits, particularly for roadways on tribal lands. For instance, the average daily count are often collected during weekdays. Annual average daily traffic counts are collected during weekdays over short periods or at specific times of the year, failing to capture actual volumes for much of the year. At the Pueblo of Jemez, for instance, peak traffic frequently occurs on weekends during the tourist season from May through October. Additionally, crash and injury data is not readily available for many tribes due to the requirement of a FOIA to obtain crash reports held by the BIA. While some tribal law enforcement agencies are making efforts to collect, organize, and evaluate their own crash data, they often face funding and staffing limitations. The absence of data does not equate to the absence of safety issues. Furthermore, pedestrian and bicycle activity may go unmeasured simply because community members are too afraid to walk or bike along dangerous roadways. For example, we are seeing an enormous increase in people walking, running, and biking since the completion of our multi-use path along the New Mexico 4 highway in the Pueblo of Jemez. I have grappled with these challenges at the Pueblo in my efforts to advocate for speed reduction and pedestrian safety improvements, as well as for seeking funding for a highway bypass project at the community. As a non-engineer, but a listener to community concerns, I've heard firsthand from residents who feel unsafe and uncomfortable walking or biking along the state highway bisecting their community. These realities call for a reevaluation of the methods and assumptions used in roadway design and speed determination, especially in tribal contexts. Pueblo of Jemez is actively considering the best options for speed management countermeasures such as speed humps, speed feedback signs, roundabouts, and road diets. One of our major challenges is controlling speeds on the state-owned New Mexico 4 highway, where most speeding citations are issued by the tribe's law enforcement officers. Here are photos of 2 feedback signs that the Pueblo installed on the New Mexico 4 in the 30-mile-per-hour zone. Now I'm going to switch gears and focus in on the Pueblo of Jemez pedestrian and bicycle safety initiatives. The Pueblo of Jemez, for those who haven't been here, is a federally recognized tribe in north-central New Mexico and home to over 3,900 tribal members. Renowned for its cultural richness, the Pueblo is the last community of native Toa language speakers. Pedestrian pathways are vital to the Pueblo, as many community members rely on walking, running, and biking for daily activities, cultural events, and recreational purposes. Our DOT has 9 staff, and we're responsible for road maintenance, planning and transportation safety initiatives, design and construction of facilities, and obtaining funding for all of our projects. Because we receive limited TTP funding, we must secure grants to make infrastructure and safety improvements. For example, we get 900,000 to 1 million, depending on the extra funding amounts, and 500,000 of that right off the top goes to our road maintenance, and the rest goes to operations and overhead and a little bit of planning. So we really, really rely on grants to build projects and to conduct safety campaigns. I'm going to discuss the New Mexico 4 highway and the recently completed multi-use path, the Hemish Path to Wellness. This map shows where the New Mexico 4 highway bisects the Pueblo of Jemez village, that blue line down the middle, at mileposts 2 through 8. And the image to the right shows the posted speeds, which change 4 times within the 6-mile section that traverses the Pueblo. So you can see that at the boundary on the left side, can you guys see my cursor? This is where the Pueblo Highway 4 starts at 50 miles per hour, and we're actually missing a 40-mile-per-hour here. So it goes 50, 40, 30 through the most concentrated portion of the village, back up to 40, and then 50. So you can see in that 6-mile stretch why we may have speeding issues too, because drivers are changing so often the speed. The New Mexico 4 highway was constructed in 1942, and the land was taken by the state via use of the Pueblo Land Condemnation Act. The Pueblo was compensated little over $3,000 for 74 acres to build that section of highway through the Pueblo. And so for over 80 years, the Pueblo has struggled with challenges that this highway has caused, one of which is major speeding issues. We did have a decrease during the pandemic, but previous to 2018 shows, and then up till now, between 3,000 and 6,000, and I think we were even up to 7,000 speeding citations, most of which are issued on this highway per year. We also analyzed crash data between 2020 and 2023 last year, our own police department's crash data, and 45% of all crashes at the Pueblo occur on this highway. Here's a map of all of our crashes. Most of them are non-injury crashes, luckily, thankfully, and the dots in red are the injury crashes. And then you can see the clusters along Highway 4. The next few slides are photos of what the community, how the community interacts with this highway. We have a ton of school bus stops right there on the highway, and so they just stop and let the children off and they cross to go to their homes. Previous to the completion of our 2-mile pedestrian pathway, all people walked, ran, and biked right along the edge of the highway here because there were no pedestrian facilities. And there are some areas that are super narrow that really have no shoulder. And then you can see here is a transit stop where across the street from where the high school is, and then traffic lined up. Here are photos of high school students when they're just getting out of school, walking along the highway to go home, and then also congregating around the transit bus stop. These are photos of some of the cultural events that takes place at the Pueblo. These types of events happen at all the tribes in New Mexico, especially the Pueblos. They have really large events such as feast days, where hundreds, if not thousands of people arrive from all over the state and even out of state to participate in these ceremonies and the dances. And so the highway lines up with a ton of cars and people walking. And then, of course, traffic. During tourist season that I mentioned, May through October, because the Pueblo is the gateway to the beautiful Jemez Mountains and the Valles Caldera and Bandelier National Monument, among other recreational opportunities, we see a ton of traffic, pretty much bumper to bumper during camping season too, and hunting and fishing. So tribal members cannot even pull out of their driveways to get onto this highway because it's just packed with traffic. And now I'm going to talk about some positive stuff, which is our multi-use path and how greatly it has impacted the community. Here is that photo, again, of those high school students walking along Highway 4. And here is that similar viewpoint with our new multi-use path that now everyone is using and loving. They have a dedicated space with a safe space to walk, run, or bike. Here's another before and after shot of this really awesome pedestrian bridge. You can see this box culvert beneath the highway. And so previous to us installing this portion of this multi-use path, people were walking down into the arroyo or the ephemeral stream here, or they were walking right on the highway because it's just a straight drop off there at the box culvert. And these are more photos of the finished trail project. These are our trailhead signs. Another section, here's that same transit stop shown in the previous photos where the students were standing and waiting. Now we have a nice pull-out area for the transit buses, and then some seating benches that are located at the bus stops and then throughout the rest of the trail. This is another, we have 2 of these pedestrian bridges that are crossing arroyos. Here's another one here on the right. And this is just another section showing the some of the retaining wall, the block wall that we put in on some of the sloped areas. This is another safety initiative to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety. We did last summer a quick build project at Day School Road. That was our first quick build project at the Pueblo, and it was amazing. We did it in this really wide section of road that fronts the elementary school, the K-6 school. You can see on the left there how wide the road is, and we have major speeding issues. So we put up these cinder blocks and made a dedicated walkway for the students in front of the fence line there entering the school, and they helped us paint and put up planters and install flowers and tomato plants and chili plants and things like that. We blocked off the road while we installed this, and we had the different grade levels come out help us put up this quick build. We also incorporated 2 chicanes where kids are riding their bikes along trails that empty out onto this road, and then they were crossing the road to get to the school. So we put chicanes on the roadway right where the bike trails ended so that kids on bikes would have a place to pause and look both ways before they cross the road. And we used tires, filled them with soil, and put flowers and plants and painted them for our chicanes. That was a really fun first quick build project, so we're hoping that our next one that I'll talk about will be just as much fun. But the kids were really into it. It was a 2-day event. They worked really hard to make it beautiful, and they learned about pedestrian and bicycle safety while doing this, the purpose of it, and how they're going to use it. Here are just more photos of them painting and participating in the event. These make me smile. Okay, I just have a few more slides left, and you guys can ask questions if you like. This is a big deal for us. We are gonna, as part of this Road to Zero grant, we are going to do another quick build project. So that multi-use path that I showed you that we just completed, we do have 2 mid-block crossings, but they're about, I think, a little over a mile apart from each other. And as we all know, people aren't gonna walk a mile to the next crosswalk. So this is another section. Here is our new trail on the right side of this photo. And this is another transit bus stop. It actually has its own bus shelter. And this is the pull-out area. So our quick build project as part of this Road to Zero grant is going to be installing a quick build between 2 crosswalks across the New Mexico 4 highway between these 2 transit bus stops. And also the school buses stop in these locations. So we're working with NMDOT and Tool Design, their consultant. They have done some really amazing figures to help us figure out, some graphics, I should say, to help us figure out what we want to do for our quick build. We haven't finalized the design yet, but we're getting close. So our scope of work for this project is going to be to monitor speeds in the project area before we set up this quick build, complete the quick build design, order supplies and coordinate setup when we finalize our design, and then get a traffic control plan together and obtain a New Mexico DOT work permit to set this up in this area, because this is their right-of-way, this highway. And then we're going to hold the quick build workshop on Friday, and then we'll be out in the field implementing the quick build on Saturday. And we chose Saturday because we feel that we'll have more community participation. We really want to make this a public event, that kind of like we did with the kids, where people come to support it and just learn about safety, learn about why we're doing it, and learn how to use the quick build once we have it set up. We're hoping to keep the quick build open and active for about 3 months, maybe longer. We'll see how it goes. And in the meantime, we'll get feedback from the community and survey and observe how they're using it, and also how vehicles respond to it. Potential project elements include precast curbs, curb ramp, speed tables, pavement markings, and signage. We're thinking of doing this curb ramp where right here to where the bus pullout is. So we're still kind of considering that part of it. So what we're hoping is that many of you who are participating today will want to come out to the Pueblo of Jemez. And as Ian mentioned earlier, there are stipends available to come join us for that Friday, Saturday, either one or both days. See how a quick build is done or help us if you've done one already. And we also want to have a food truck, so we'll feed you. Yeah, it should be a fun time. Hopefully we have good weather too. And I guess to close my presentation, I just want to stress, I'm learning about the safe system approach, and I want to stress that everyone really look into how they can incorporate this in all of their projects and their designs. I have talked with our engineers that we're working with, expressing the Pueblo's desire to look at all aspects of projects, not just roadway design, but the users of the roads, the users of trails, the emergency response folks, to really look at these projects holistically more than we have in the past. And I think that will really improve. I know the federal and state agencies are implementing and have adopted the safe system approach. I just really look forward to seeing it more in action. Let's see. I think do we have time for a few questions,
Yeah.
Ian?
Absolutely, Sherry. Yeah, thanks for the questions in the chat. So the first one's from Ron Hall. Sherry, does the Pueblo of Jemez have a policy on managing parking and traffic during public cultural events?
Thanks for that question, Ron. So we implemented this in 2024, a policy to have those folks that have been normally parking along the highway to now park up at the wellness center and use our trail, our newly constructed trail, to walk into the Pueblo. We tried it out in the August feast day and November feast day, and I was there for the November feast day, and I realized that we need to couple it with more law enforcement. It takes time to change the hearts and minds of people who've been doing the same habit for decades. And so we did see some people following the new parking area and walking down, but then a lot of people just don't want to walk. Even able-bodied people didn't want to walk. So we're still seeing people parking along, like as close to the village as they can. This year or last year we had closed all the access roads into the village, all but just a couple, to mitigate traffic and to increase pedestrian safety while walking through the narrow roads in the village. And then we saw an exorbitant amount of people just parking everywhere they wanted all along the highway. So we took photos, learned lessons, and are going to try again this coming August with Feast Day to block areas along the highway better with more devices, and definitely block the trail so that people aren't trying to park on the new multi-use path. And then direct traffic, we'll probably have to hire some law enforcement to help direct traffic to the parking, like as they do at concerts and things like that. So yeah, we're trying to make that a safer area for our super large events.
Thanks, Sherry. And there's a question from Clara Cheeves. She would like to learn more about the process for getting the Quick Build demonstration project set up with the State Department of Transportation. Was that process clearly defined and accessible? And do you have a sense of the cost for the Quick Build project on the state highway?
Oh, those are all great questions. So NMDOT planning department is amazing, and they are helping us. They have some funding to help communities with quick build projects and other pedestrian safety initiatives. They're also developing a quick build guide. And so we're hoping that our project will help inform their guide as well, maybe from a tribal context. So it's kind of a win-win for both parties. So it's new. Quick builds are new. I mean, previously we called them pop-ups, and that wasn't legit title enough. And so we're trying to get people to accept them and have respect for these quick build demonstration projects. But to me, they're new. I mean, I guess I've really only been hearing about them for 5 years. I don't know how long they've actually been implemented, but so I don't know about the process being clear. I think we're working through it together, but we do have a great partnership with the planning department at NMDOT, and in terms of cost, I'm thinking between 10 and 15,000, maybe a little more if we buy a lot of these precast curbs. Those are probably gonna be one of the more expensive items along with these delineators. So paint doesn't cost much to do the crosswalk. So we're still developing our cost estimate and deciding, you know, which elements that we're gonna build into this for sure. The traffic control plan was $100. Not too bad to get that drawn up. And then I'm waiting on the cost for signage and devices. That might be another expense that was more than I intended. If we keep the quick build up for 3 months, I'm not sure what the cost will be for signage. We might actually have signage in stock with our road maintenance department that we could use. So it's kind of moving parts right now in terms of cost, but if you want, we can follow up with you and let you know like what our final expenses were for the quick build. For the quick build we did at Daysville Road was $10,000 for all those materials. That doesn't include any staff labor, it's just materials, and then we had a celebration and fed the community members box lunches and things. So all in cost for that quick build was $10,000, and that was a grant that we obtained from the University of North Carolina. And I think it was a General Motors grant that they had received, and it was like a pass through to us. So yeah, we just have experience with that one quick build, which was 10,000, and this one, I can let you know what it ends up being. Did that answer all the questions?
There's one more from Yvonne Albritton. We'll make this the last one. What is the time frame for this road safety project?
Hi, Yvonne. Good to see you. So you mean for the RTZ grant or just the quick build? Because the quick build's going to be 3 months implemented is what we're hoping for, but our grant timeline is 1.5 years, correct, Ian, or 2 years?
Yeah, 1 year and 3 months total.
A year and 3 months. Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty quick.
Sherry, from the time you're awarded the funding,
Yeah.
how long does it take before they actually give you that award or start to pay for the things that you're doing? How long does it take?
Oh, good question. You want to answer that, Ian?
Sure. We were awarded the grant in June of last year. The Quick Build project is the biggest piece of the grant, but not the only piece. So we held a webinar, we started working on a resource library, we did a lot of other things, and the Quick Build will be designed and actually implemented in either late April or early May. But in general, from receiving funding, I would think you could, design and get a permit and install a quick build within 6 months or something. Permitting is the most uncertain piece of it. Whatever agency owns the road, working with them to design the project and get it installed. So I'm going to take a quick break now. Thank you, Sherry. A round of virtual applause for our keynote presentation. We'll just take a quick break right now and reconvene at, it will be 10:55 Pacific time, 1:55 Eastern time, and those of you in other time zones can work it out. We're just basically going to take about a 2-minute break, and we will see you back for part 2. Thank you. Welcome back. We're going to get started on part 2. Can somebody who I can see, Sherry, could you just confirm that you can hear me and that you can see this slide okay? Thank
Yes,
you.
I can.
Thumbs up. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Sherry. Okay, awesome. Great. Well, we want to talk about the project and create or open up opportunities for all of you to become involved in one way or another. As I mentioned earlier, the overall grant-funded project is titled Pedestrian Fatalities in Indian Country, Responding to a Crisis. And the partners in this project with America Walks are Pueblo of Jemez, Cherokee Nation Public Health, Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes, University of Montana, MG Tech Writing LLC, and other partners who are assisting in various ways. New Mexico Department of Transportation, for example, as we work through our various projects within the overall project. And this is a problem statement that we are seeking to address with the project, that tribal communities are often bisected by county, state, or interstate highways with high-speed traffic, which creates safety, health, and quality of life problems for residents. So that's the problem that we keep in mind and we're looking to solve. So here are some sort of specific examples. We see a lot of high-speed roads without sidewalks. Sherry already illustrated those in Pueblo of Jemez, and here are some shots from other tribal communities. There are also wide roads, high-speed roads again, without pedestrian crossings. So again, there's an infrastructure gap there, and people really take a risk because there is no other way to get across this highway. And of course, the risk is severely increased late in the day as the sun's going down or after dark across all demographics and communities and other categories. There is always a peak in pedestrian serious injuries and fatalities in those hours around twilight when there are still a lot of people moving through the community, but the light is getting worse. And Sherry mentioned the lack of lighting, a problem in many tribal communities. And there's a general tendency for the design of these rural-style roadways to encourage very high speeds. And we know we can design roads that encourage low speeds, but that has not been done in so many of these communities. The harms that we observe in communities as a result of these road designs, residents are killed or injured while walking or biking. Short trips, which involve crossing the highway, are completed by driving very rationally, given the risk of being a pedestrian. Parents do not allow their children to play outside without supervision. Low levels of physical activity cause and exacerbate chronic disease conditions. Noise and air pollution negatively impact mental and physical health. Travelers pass through the community at high speed without any opportunity for cultural exchange. And all of this combines to create stress and poor quality of life. So our general project strategies, which we laid out in the grant proposal to the National Safety Council, were around education, developing both professional training materials and community storytelling program focused on the issue of tribal pedestrian safety. And then, as we've already discussed, we plan to demonstrate and evaluate by installing these low-cost, temporary, quick-build demonstration projects, which are designed to reduce traffic speeds in the communities. And we will do significant evaluation in Pueblo of Jemez and a couple of other communities in terms of how the projects impact vehicle speeds and vehicle volumes, as well as how members of the community feel about the projects, the demonstration projects, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of effectiveness, in terms of whether it creates an inconvenience for them if they can't get as quickly from one end of the community to the other. And we'll gather all of that data. And these kind of demonstration projects have been done in other communities across the US over the last several years. And then participate. We want to create a national coalition focused on this issue. This is actually the third policy roundtable. The first one was held online like this in December 2022. I know many of you were in attendance. The second one was an in-person policy roundtable at the September 2023 National Transportation in Indian Country Conference in Anchorage. And some of you were there as well. And this is the third one. So we kind of have an idea of turning this policy roundtable into an annual event, which could be in person or virtual, depending on various opportunities, as well as establishing a more cohesive national coalition of professionals in various fields, advocates for various different causes related to this, people who bring various skill sets around communications or policy analysis, engineering design, and so on, to set a goal of addressing the high rate of tribal pedestrian fatalities. Just to give you a sense of the calendar, we are in January and we have this policy roundtable right now. As Sherry has mentioned, the event in Pueblo of Jemez, it will either be the final Friday, Saturday of April or the first Friday, Saturday of May. That will be determined very soon, hopefully within a week or two, what the definite dates are. And we'll be holding a tribal pedestrian safety workshop in person on the Friday. And then we will have done the design and gathered all the components, and the quick build demonstration project construction or installation will take place on the Saturday. And as I mentioned earlier, there will be travel stipends available. If you would like to attend, then you can help actually install the quick build project, as will members of the community, so that this really is a project that the community has ownership of, which is an important element of quick builds. We have two other in-person events planned, one in Cherokee Nation in March or April, and the other with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes in July or August. Both of these will be smaller events than the one in Pueblo of Jemez. We will not have travel stipends. They will be really local events with a training for local officials and professionals and community members, and a quick build project in those communities. Right at the end of the whole project, we'll be hosting a wrap-up webinar, which will be broadcast through America Walks webinar program. And I didn't mention, but we will be hearing from Maya and Samantha shortly. But we've already done a significant project with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, a community engagement project using a methodology known as Our Voice. And that is part of the effective community engagement that will help us address the problem of speeding traffic in communities in a way that is supported by the community. And working all the way through the project calendar, Hillary and Pollyanna are leading the effort to develop a tribal pedestrian safety resource library. So we mentioned interest groups earlier on, and we have come up with the idea for 4 separate interest groups or advisory groups, which we are inviting all of you to participate in. We're looking at up to 3 virtual meetings for each of these interest groups. online, spread over the next 3 to 6 months. Our goals are to get your ideas on the particular projects that we're implementing as part of the grant-funded project, as well as to sort of share what we're doing, getting your feedback, and to encourage and support you to replicate some of these strategies in your own communities and providing resources to help you do that. So the first group will be focused on community engagement using the Our Voice methodology, and that will be led by Maya Pedersen and Sam Morigeau. And I will mention that in a minute, each of these group leaders will give a short presentation about what they're planning in this group. And then we will be breaking out into 4 separate breakout rooms, and you will have the opportunity to choose which of these 4 topics you want to talk about during the 20 minutes or so left in this second part of the policy roundtable. So be thinking about that now. That's not a commitment to join this advisory group or this particular interest group, but it'll help you find out more, and we will be asking people to actually sign up within the next week or 2. So community engagement through Our Voice with Maya and Sam, the Tribal Pedestrian Safety Resource Library, led by Hillary Mead and Hollyanna Littlebull, the Quick Build Demonstration Projects Advisory Group, which will be led by Sherry, and the In-Person Workshops and Trainings Group will be led by me. So at this point, I want to invite Maya and Sam to give a little overview of the community engagement through Our Voice interest group.
Sure, thanks, Ian. Appreciate the opportunity. Hi, everyone. My name is Maya Pedersen. I am a research assistant professor at the University of Montana, and I'm going to be just giving this brief snapshot of our project, and then Dr. Samantha Morigeau and I will be co-leading the breakout group. So just kind of a quick overview. Our project is entitled the Community Mobility and Pedestrian Safety Project. And this project is part of a larger community-based participatory research project that's been going on since 2018, and it's a partnership between the University of Montana and the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes Tribal Health Department. So for this COMPS project, we've been referring to it as, we have short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals. And we'll really be focusing on these short-term goals, just identifying factors that influence community mobility and pedestrian safety among Native American older adults living on the Flathead Reservation. And we're using a method called the Our Voice method to achieve that short-term goal. And that method will also carry us into the intermediate goal of leveraging these findings and kind of activated participants who are interested in continuing forward into advocacy and pedestrian safety efforts to actually influence those changes alongside stakeholders with a long-term goal of promoting health-generating behaviors and improving overall community well-being. So Ian, go ahead to the next slide. So the Our Voice method, this method was developed at the Stanford Prevention Research Center, and it's intended to be an opportunity for individuals to share their lived experiences and then leverage these opportunities to share their lived experiences to impact policies and plans that affect their health. So this is considered a citizen science opportunity because it engages participants in this 7-stage process. And we're going to be going through our steps on this 7-stage process during our breakout group. Thus far, we have completed the engage phase, where we have engaged participants who are older adults living on the Flathead Reservation to use a mobile app that is called the Discovery Tool to document their lived experiences as it relates to pedestrian safety and community mobility. So that's that step 2. They've used the app to discover and share aspects of their lived experiences. And then we've also started into that step 3, the discuss phase, where we are discussing among a broader group of older adults around these themes and using the photos and the lived experiences to generate additional conversations and themes. So Ian, go ahead to the next slide. I'll just briefly share the prompts that we used within the Discovery Tool app that allowed older adults who are engaged in the data collection to take photos. So they were taking photos in response to these prompts. And we used two different prompts. One was, what makes it easier for you and older adults or elders to move around, walking, biking, or in a wheelchair from place to place in your community? What makes it harder? And then we also used the question, after several weeks, we switched the question to have a different focus, and that was, what makes it easier or safer to move around in your daily life? And what makes it less hard or less safe? And that's really getting at the community mobility aspect. We also had tags that participants could add on to their data collection efforts. So they could add street design, walkability, community connectedness, fall risk, or weather. Okay, go ahead to the next slide, Ian. So just briefly, and we're going to expand upon this in our breakout group, during the Discover phase, we had 28 community walks across the communities where we held these data collection efforts, which you'll kind of see this map below. It's actually communities all along Highway 93, which is a highway that bisects the Flathead Reservation. And so we had 28 community walks across this Highway 93, these communities located along Highway 93. We had 63 photos collected and 51 narrative comments from participants. And at the top of the slide, you can see an example of what that data point would look like for an individual who collected a photo and left a narrative, as well as having a map and ranking kind of good or bad for the community. We used these photos and these data to create a data museum that we then brought to the 5 communities and engaged participants to review all the photos and comments that had been contributed and to add additional perspectives into the data that had already been collected. And so we're kind of in the middle of the step 3 process discussed. So we've gone through the first steps of these 5 focus groups. Now we're going to move into the stages we'll be engaging additional stakeholders and moving the participants through not only discussing their lived experiences, but then also identifying themes, prioritizing these themes, and identifying next steps for action to advocate for pedestrian safety. And then I'll hand this over to Hillary and Holly for the next project. Thanks.
Thank you, Mom.
Go ahead, Hillary.
Okay, I'll start it out, and Helena, you can just jump in wherever you need to. But we are putting together this tribal pedestrian safety resource library. And so what our group will be focusing on will be the actual library. We've developed a few elements so far. And so what we are going to be wanting is just your input onto those elements. As you see here, this is an element that was developed by the Yakima tribe. And this might be something that we want you to look at. What are some gaps that we have? What are the needs that you see in your community? And then just reviewing our documents that we have. Does it fit? Do we need to add anything? Do we need to make any edits or suggestions to that? And so right now we have come up with like an infographic that introduces the issues that are going on within tribal communities and what are some countermeasures that we can use to overcome those barriers. And then other things are we're developing a community engagement guide so that anybody can do some community engagement projects within their community and what steps they could take to gather some data and information. And then we are also wanting to do some links. So I know Pollyanna is working on developing projects, a list of projects on what is going on within our tribal communities and some contact information so that if you go into our resource library, you'll be able to go in there and find a project that maybe closely resembles your tribal community, and you'll have a contact information so that you can follow up with that tribe. And then we're also going to do links to stories. So we know that Native Americans tell their progress through stories. and they're very important in our life. And a lot of times that we don't have things that are written down. And so we've done a lot of digital stories, or we have documented our processes and our experiences through these video stories. And so we want to make sure that we're linking those in, and then that way that you can also gather ideas from those digital stories as well. And Pollyanna, I'll turn it over to you if you have anything else to add.
Pollyanna, if you're speaking, you might be muted. I'm thinking Pollyanna may have had to step away. So let's move on to, thank you, Hillary, and thank you, Maya. Let's move on to the third group. Sherry, it's back to you.
The group of one until I get advisory members. So these are the same slides I showed earlier on our forthcoming quick build project on the New Mexico 4 intersecting with Buffalo Hill Road, which is a road that leads to a residential neighborhood. We're hoping to set up our quick build here for 3 months and maybe longer if the community responds well and people driving through respond well and like it. You can go to the next slide. So the design elements are being worked on with tool design and NMDOT. We really like alternative 2, and I think we want to move forward with that. We just need to do some collaboration with our district, with our New Mexico DOT District 6, to make sure that the elements that we choose are okay. We know that these things will be, these elements will be installed within the clear zone. And so that's kind of a tricky, touchy subject for me because I feel like the clear zone is solely to protect cars and their drivers and not human bodies who are not protected by metal shells. So we are making sure that we have crash-worthy devices in the clear zone to protect cars from damaging their cars and themselves while people are walking on the side of the road. And so that is the main goal, is to select a crash-worthy setup, since we are proposing to install this on the road edge. So that's a collaboration that is ongoing. And I know we'll land on something that is mutually acceptable for the tribe and for NMDOT. So right now, here's what it looks like. We have a walkway on the east side of the NM4 with 2 crosswalks, one at both bus stop locations so that people can walk back and forth where the bus stops are. One's a transit stop. Well, they're both transit stops. And then on the east side, there are more actual bus stops where the buses stop for children. So that's the place, the strategy and selection of where we're placing this is where we see a lot of pedestrian volume. You can go to the last slide. So we're looking at doing these precast curbs with delineators fastened to them, the curb ramp for ADA access, and then speed tables potentially, and pavement markings for the crosswalks. The speed tables we would put, I think we would put those on Buffalo Hill Road. Is that right, Ian? If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
The intersecting road. Yeah. So that's what we have in a nutshell. And I hope that many of you will have time to come out and join us either for the workshop on Friday or both days, the workshop. And I know a lot of people, you're not going to get paid to work on a Saturday, but you will get fed. So you should come join us.
And just a reminder, these advisory groups or interest groups are intended to be a kind of a two-way communication. we have ideas, and this particular project is fairly well advanced, but not totally finalized yet. So we'd love to get your feedback through the discussion we're going to have in just a few minutes, and through the advisory group going forward. We want to get your feedback, and we also want to kind of work with you to help you design and install maybe some similar projects in your community or in another community. And the same goes for the fourth work group, focused on workshops and trainings, which I'm going to facilitate. And I'll be facilitating the discussion coming up in just a minute, as well as the work group, which I'm expecting will meet 3 times between now and the time of the Pueblo of Jemez workshop. So a big focus for us will be figuring out what are the goals for this workshop. We expect it to be attended by a number of you professionals and advocates and government administrators from around the country working with or in tribal communities, as well as local officials and local professionals and local residents and advocates who care about their community. Be an all-day workshop on a Friday, either at the end of April or the beginning of May. We're going to need to set up some goals and then develop an agenda to accomplish those goals. And we hope that those of you who participate in this advisory group will also attend the workshop, and will recruit others to attend and share the information that these travel stipends are available. And we will also, in our work group, if we have time, be doing a similar process for the local trainings, which are going to be taking place in Cherokee Nation and with the CSKT tribes, in terms of maybe taking, what we're learning from the process with the Pueblo of Jemez event and applying it to these other communities. So I think with that, we have described the 4 groups. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and ask Rachel if you could go ahead and open up the 4 breakout rooms. And we're going to set up the breakout rooms for 20 minutes. And choose the room that you most want to enjoy the discussion today, a 20-minute discussion around this area. And then we'll come back, and I'd love to get little report outs from each room. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for participating. We had a great conversation in the room that I was in, talking about some goals and desired outcomes for the workshops and trainings. I hope you all had good conversations. 20 minutes goes really fast, doesn't it? And there's a learning right there. And we'll be, as we get into our breakout rooms, we'll be thinking about into our working groups after this event, thinking about how to best use the time that we have together and planning those discussions. But I'd love to take maybe just a couple of minutes for each group now to report out what you ended up talking about. So I'm going to call on the members of the project team. But if there's somebody else in the group who you kind of arranged with to do the report out, that's fine. So Maya, let me go to you first. You and Samantha, what did you talk about? And is there somebody else who's going to give that report?
Sure, Emily Tilch is going to give the report. No? Okay, I can give the report then. Emily had volunteered to take notes. In true community engagement style, we spent our whole time introducing ourselves to one another. And what was really cool about our breakout group is that we had folks from all across the country in just this amazing variety of disciplines and positions in their community. as well as across kind of like age groups and positionalities. So I'm really excited to continue working with this group, and I hope that in the future we can talk a little bit more about the Our Voice community engagement method. But for now, just really happy to have met these folks and look forward to working with them.
That's great. Well, thank you. Anybody else from the community engagement group want to add anything to what Maya said? Feel free to take yourself off mute and just chime in. In that case, we'll move on to the resource library group. Hillary or Hollyana?
I can report out for our group. We had a smaller group, so we didn't have to have as much time, and most of us kind of knew each other. So we asked a couple of questions, and actually we only got to 2 questions. We did have good conversation, but we talked about what kind of professional training resources that are needed. So one thing that got mentioned was like a how-to guide for quick build projects in tribal communities, and really looking into education on federal laws that you may need to abide by. For example, there's treaty tribes and non-treaty tribes, and the laws may be different between those. And particularly one aspect got talked about in the state of Washington, that it was illegal to run on the side of the highway, and there was people that have been cited for that. And so knowing what those laws are and how we can abide by those. And then just doing some contacts to organizations that are not necessarily within your own tribe, but maybe they are the other tribes, other tribal transportation departments, public health departments, or maybe even their TTAP programs. And then we also talked about the education materials and doing monthly initiatives that are appropriate for tribes. And if we need to rebrand those to make them more tribal specific, similar to what FHWA has, but making them just like fit tribes. And then we talked about one particular day called World Day of Remembrance. It's usually the 3rd Sunday of November. This was adopted in the UK, and kind of talked about Sundays are not always the best day, and so looking into maybe celebrating that on a different day for North America. And then Families for Safe Streets kind of helps to organize those type of events, and there is a website you can go to if you want to organize your own event. And so we talked about that, and that's as far as we got.
Thanks. That was a lot. Hollyana, anything to add to what Hillary said? And you're muted at the moment, Hollyana.
Just to formally announce to the group, I've been invited to go to meet with the senators in Washington State. Last month, or in December, at the Senate committee meeting, the poster that Hillary showed of this was shared at the Senate committee meeting, and it's been requested by a couple of the senators that they want some autographed signed posters of, because I was the artist who designed those safety products that we use to announce, be cautious, life is precious. And so it's really been an interesting couple of days for me, because I would, when I answered the phone, I was kind of like, Senator who? and luckily for me, she's not in my jurisdiction. So anyway, I just wanted to share that good news with, being a representative of America Walks, and also a safety advocate, that, that's, we get to ring our own bell sometimes. And so I just wanted to share that with the group.
Well, congratulations, Hollyana. That's really exciting. And the more attention we can get from elected officials at all levels, then the more progress we can make with the changes that are needed. And Hollyana is an artist as well as a public safety professional and an engineer and so many other things. In addition to graphic art, I believe, Hollyanna, I'm correct in saying you're a sculptor or a sculptress as well. And one thing I haven't mentioned to you, but kind of just popped into my head, is that somewhere we might create a gateway, a traffic calming gateway treatment, and put one of your sculptures as part of that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know in this group, I actually sculpted a 14 plus foot tall Bigfoot. And the reason why I say that is because that was as tall as my ladder would let me go. So it was taller than 14 feet. But yeah, I actually made a Bigfoot sculpture, which is currently being moved to Portland, Oregon right now, where it's going to be on display at the World Environment Museum or something like that. But yeah, bringing awareness to the environment. And in our culture, Bigfoot is the protector of all living things. And so that's kind of why it's getting placed there. But yeah, just a side note.
Thank you, Hollyanna. Sherry, tell us about your group. I'm going to guess you had a pretty big group.
Yes, there were 20 of us.
Oh my
and
gosh.
we did just what Maya said. We went around and introduced basically our name, where we work, or our title, and why we're interested in quick build projects. And so from those introductions, though, we did get to hear a lot of information about people's experience with quick builds to date. And there's a lot of interest. So our group was a really good mix of state DOTs, federal, highway, and consulting firms, and then tribal transportation staff. So yeah, we just went around and talked about what our experience with quick builds are and why we're interested in them. Some people are doing research, to bring back to other tribes or their own tribes on how they can do quick builds because they haven't done them yet. And we talked a little bit about the guidebook that NMDOT Planning Division is developing for quick builds and how we here at HAMAS hope to inform that guidebook on some techniques. And that Misha was in our group as well and talked about offering the same kind of input for that guidebook that other tribes across the nation can hopefully use. One example is how to do a quick build on an unpaved road, because I wasn't convinced 5 years ago that we could do that, and now I am, because I kind of had in my head that quick builds, like the ones we see in the cities, largely employ paint, and we can't do that on unpaved roads. So we have found workarounds for that, and they worked out amazingly. So I think that's a gist. Anyone else from our group want to chime in? And Yvonne has some grant funding sources that she's going to share for quick builds. Yeah, I think that sums up what we discussed, but feel free to chime in, anyone from our quick build group.
Great. Well, thanks, Sherry. And Yvonne, if you could send all of us, or send me at least, the resources, and anybody else who has resources, I think that the best thing is I will put them all together into an email and send them out as part of the follow-up from this policy roundtable. I know I've received several others that are relevant to some of the presentations and sessions here. So just send me resources that you would like to share with the whole group, and then we'll start curating that list of resources, and we'll make sure that everybody has access to it. I'll give a quick sum up of the discussion that we had in the workshops and trainings groups. We talked mainly about what are our desired outcomes from these events, the one in April or May in Pueblo of Jemez, and the other two where we're going to be doing more of a locally focused engagement and training. One of the goals that came up was to sort of make sure that we bring in other disciplines, talk about the health aspects of pedestrian safety, talk about the alignment with cultural priorities and norms. the healing benefit of walking and being able to walk safely. The importance of slowing down and connecting in both the physical sense and in the emotional sense. So we want to slow down the vehicles to create this safer and calmer pedestrian space where people can walk and be relaxed and enjoy their community. But we will also slow down and connect internally as well. And there was also a call that we should use these workshops and trainings to create or share examples of successful projects so that they can be replicated, and that they should be a sort of a convening for different groups to learn from each other. Anybody else from that workshops and trainings group want to, anything I missed you want to add? Thumbs up from Mark there. Okay, well, we're almost at the top of the second hour, so let's take another quick break. And when we come back, Adam Larson, Amy Cohen, and Pamela Skrastat Journey will kick us off with some presentations about their work, their organization, their projects, and then we will get into envisioning and imagining and making some initial ideas around what our national coalition might look like. So my clock here in Central Time US says 1:57. So let's take a 2 or 3 minute break and reconvene at 2 o'clock Central Time. That'll be noon Pacific, 1 Eastern. And Adam, you will be up first. See you in a minute. We're back. It's 2 o'clock Central Time, and it's my pleasure to introduce Adam Larson with the Federal Highway Administration's Office of Tribal Transportation Safety to tell us about a project that he's been leading over the last several months. Go ahead, Adam. I see you're sharing your screen already.
All right, thanks, Ian. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Zoom does funny things sometimes. All right, yeah, so thanks for the opportunity to share about this research project we've been working on. The title of it is more complex than what you see here, but basically it's a research project looking at pedestrian safety in tribal areas and how do we go about identifying those locations most in need of safety improvement. And so Sherry had already talked earlier and several others about the fact that there's a lack of data in tribal areas. It's sometimes hard to define problems in tribal areas, and we might call it a data desert. There just isn't the information we'd like to see, and isn't the information that exists in a lot of other environments. And in some cases that ends up making tribal areas appear to be more safe than other areas, because as for example, states do a statewide safety analysis, they may use the data that's in their statewide database. And you know, if tribal data isn't making it into that database, a lot of times that appears to be the most safe place on the map. There just isn't any events happening there. And so as a result of that sort of gap in data, we see that there are often inequitable distribution of resources. The safety improvements aren't necessarily reaching those areas where we just don't have the same kind of information being collected. And so it makes it difficult to identify those projects and justify the funding to make those projects implemented. So this project is looking at those safety risks that are faced by pedestrians in tribal areas, and trying to and has developed tools to help both identify countermeasures as well as put some of the justification in place that's often needed to go after those resources to make pedestrian safety improvements. So this project involved working with a advisory committee, and a number of people on this call today were a part of that advisory committee, helping us as we we went through to make sure we were gathering the data that we that exists in tribal areas and using that to the best that we could to make sure that the results were relevant and to help us review some of the draft products that were a part of the project. So thank you to those who participated in that advisory group. And we've gone through all that data, documented some methods that tribal planners could use, developed some tools, and ultimately have published a report from this project. Now, I'm definitely not going to go into all the detail of all the data analysis that was done because there simply isn't time here, but we did a detailed analysis of fatal crashes and some injury crashes from tribal areas. Most of this was from state databases. We did get a few tribes that also sent us crash reports that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to consider. So some definite patterns emerged from that data analysis, and we identified 8 risk factors and use these risk factors in assembling those justifications that I talked about. So the risk factors that we identified, first off, proximity to land uses. There was a definite pattern of crashes happening within a quarter mile of pedestrian attractors. And we won't go into detail on that, but that was a very clear pattern. Whether or not there's pedestrian facilities existing and how complex those are. What the posted speed limit was, we don't have data on operating speeds, but the posted speed is something we were able to use as a risk factor. How many lanes are in the roadway? How wide is the roadway? Is there a paved shoulder? Is there lighting and pedestrian behavior? And so all of that's been developed into a risk evaluation form. And I'll show you real quick what that risk evaluation form does. Each of those factors I just mentioned and a few others are on this list. And as you pick one of those risk factors to try to identify, to try to define your facility that you're interested in improving, a score is generated based off of our crash data analysis. We've assigned scores to each of these options. So as you pick one of these, a narrative starts to build over here. And so just for example, if you had the pedestrian attractors within a quarter mile of the proposed project location, it would generate a statement over here talking about at the national level data analysis, about 71% of the pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries occurred within that quarter mile. So all of that, again, helping just to build the justification that may help you access some of the resources that are out there. And while you may not have had the crash occur at your facility, you definitely would then have some national statistics that could help you proactively address safety at a particular facility. So that's really the gist of the project, and appreciate the opportunity to share about that today. We do have the report and that interactive tool published at tribalsafety.org/ped-study, as well as there's a recorded webinar available that goes into some more detail on that. So I'd welcome you to get in touch with me if you want any more information about that project. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you very much, Adam. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have time to respond to questions in real time. But if you have questions for Adam based on that presentation, then pop it in the chat and I will make sure that they get to him. And the same for Amy and Pamela coming up, and that they can reply offline, as it were. And also, Adam, hopefully you can let us have that presentation, and we're going to create a shared folder that everybody will have access to and place all of the resources there. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Amy Cohen with Families for Safe Streets to tell us about your organization and your work, Amy.
Thank you so much. So again, I'm Amy Cohen. I'm the co-founder and president of Families for Safe Streets. And We are the group nobody should have to join. As you can see here in the photo, we are the face behind the statistics that you've been hearing about today. You know, our mission is to confront the preventable epidemic of traffic violence through advocacy and support. So we fight for the changes that you've all been talking about today, you know, roadway design with quick builds, slower speed limits, making sure our vehicles, as they've gotten bigger and larger, are safer. In fact, we're leading a multi-state campaign right now, pushing for the installation and mandate of anti-speeding technology in the vehicles of the most dangerous drivers. We also support those who've been personally impacted, and we really also prioritize those who are most vulnerable on our roadways. And this is my story. You know, Sammy was 12 years old. He was a smart, street-savvy, kind 8th grader, just trying to get from school to soccer practice. You know, he came home for a snack, spent a little time with my daughter, and they went their separate ways, and he was killed crossing the street in front of our apartment building. It's been, you know, 11 and a half years, and it's still hard. It's a heartache no parent, no family member should ever have to endure. So I joined with others and helped families for safe streets. And today on the call, we also have one of our members who's going to share her story, Fabiola. Are you on? Well, Fabiola is a member of an indigenous community in Mexico, and she lost her son, Brian, in 2006, and joined with us and is currently the co-chair of the New York chapter of Families for Safe Streets. We are a national organization at this point, and we have chapters and individuals fighting across the country. And we had two key things that we wanted to share with you today to make sure that you knew that no one should have to go through this alone. I am hearing Fabiola saying she is here. Do you want to share a little bit about Brian, Fabiola? Are you able to get on? You're still muted if so. I'll come back if she's able to get on.
Fabiola is asking if the administrator host can give her permission to speak.
Is she?
Yep, I've clicked on ask to unmute. Let me play with that for just a moment.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if she comes on, hopefully she can share a bit about Brian, and I'll go back to it. You know, we just wanted to make sure you knew that nobody should have to go through this alone. We have a range of support services. If you have members in your tribal communities across the country, we do virtual support groups. We have peer mentoring where we match up people who've had a similar loss or injury. We have an online resource guide to help people manage the logistics. And we're just here to make sure no one has to go through this alone.
I believe Fabiola now is unmuted.
Yes.
Yay.
Hi,
Go ahead,
everyone.
Fabiola, and you can add about Brian and anything else.
Yes. Thank you, Amy. Good afternoon, everyone. Fabiola Mendieta Cuapio, the co-chair for Families for Safe Streets, New York chapter. As you can see, the picture of my son, Brian was killed back in 2006. And like Amy shared that, unfortunately, you know, the group that we lead, it's the group that we really don't want members to go through the same pain and lose a loved one. My work in New York and state in New York City is to let everyone know that they're not alone. I discovered Families for Safe Streets in 2018. I thought I was alone, but really we have a whole community. We have different groups of support for people who lost a loved one. And I hear Amy also share that this is personal to me. I'm an indigenous community. I'm from the indigenous community, from the Nahua Nation in Mexico. And I just want to say thank you so much. And if there is anything I can do in my personal capacity, and also, you know, with the circle of Families for Safe Streets, please do let us know. And back to you, Amy.
Thank you. So again, there are two things that we're hoping you take away from this. Please, if you connect with anyone who's had a loss or injury, let them know we are here for support, and then we help prepare them to get involved in advocacy if and when they are ready. And second, I'll turn it over to Tom DeVito, our National Director, to share about our new National Story Map.
Hi, thanks, Amy. Thanks, Fabiola. Thanks, Ian, and the team over at America Walks, and everybody who is on this call. I just want to share, and I'll put it in the link, a little bit about our Families for Safe Streets story map. We are also a Road to Zero grant recipient, and this is kind of one of the components of the work that we are doing in order to elevate the stories of the people who have lost loved ones or who have been seriously injured. You know, we know from many scientific studies, as well as just kind of lived experience of doing advocacy, that, you know, the data, while powerful, only goes so far when it comes to changing hearts and minds. And it really takes centering the stories and reminding people that the data is not just numbers on a page, but every number represents an entire universe of possibility and potential that has been lost. And, you know, the story map is a tool that we have developed that is trying to tell both sides of those stories simultaneously. The numbers, the scale, but then also the impact on real people and real families and real communities. So we encourage everyone to take a look at the story map. This is a place where people can go to leave, you know, a memorial to their loved one, but it is also a place where decision makers, the media, and others can go to and then see that there are, you know, people in communities that they are either representing or covering who have been impacted, which then gives them a pathway to connect and tell stories either, you know, again, in the media, potentially, maybe it's an elected official who is trying to pass safety legislation. And this is a way for them to connect with families who may be interested in kind of supporting that effort. Anyway, this is a tool that we've been working on. Really would love for folks to share in their communities. Any way that you can kind of get the word out would really kind of add to the power of the story and lead to you know, change kind of on the ground, which is really kind of what we are. That is our North Star on this. So happy to answer any questions about this offline. I'll leave my email and my phone number in the chat as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Amy and Fabiola and Tom. And I want us to just pause for a moment's silence to think about the losses that Amy and Fabiola have experienced, losses that some of you may have experienced or people you know. So I'm just going to pause for a moment. Okay, well, let's move to solutions. And the idea of complete streets is one solution, and somebody who's done a lot of thinking about complete streets in Indian country is Pamela Skrastat-Journey. And Pamela, if you would like to share your screen and talk about your story, your virtual story project.
All right. Now the question, can you hear me well?
We can hear you and we can see your screen.
Perfect. All right. This presentation was a workshop that was first done in 2022 in Louisville, Kentucky at the National Tribal conference for transportation in Indian country. So it is meant to be an exploratory, it's informative, but really I want you just to think about things. And when we're, sorry, I'm going to throw out the artistry here from the local artistry, but this is a Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation in Kansas. And this enters their park where their powwow grounds are, and it provides access to buffalo viewing, and there's walking trails. But it was done by a local artist. So it's absolutely lovely. All right. So I have these quotes. Living somewhere involves a physical merging with its landscape, with every crevice of its environment. And then the idea to make no little plans, they have no magic to stir men's blood and probably will not themselves be realized. So we go into this with the idea that we're talking about what about our physical surroundings and stirring our imagination, using what the federal government has adopted, because the Federal Highway Administration, oh, there it goes, they have adopted the Complete Street Strategy. And it's a complete streets is an approach to planning, designing, building, operating, and maintaining streets that enable safe access for all people who need to use them, including pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, transit riders of all ages and abilities. And if you want to learn more, you can click on that there. This is also my story map that will be available. And you can see for the federal highway, the Complete Streets implementation strategy, it's understanding the community and the network content. So that's one of the big things is know your community, identifying the safety, connectivity, and equity concerns, and then implementing these improvements over time, and then evaluating their impacts. So there's Complete Streets in Federal Highway. And if you click on these, you will see that it'll take you to the specifics parts about, well, Complete Streets is a safety strategy. It's a connectivity strategy. It's an equity strategy. It's a climate strategy. But my question is, what else can Complete Streets be for Indian country? And so that's really where this workshop starts putting this out there. Let's think about it. What does it mean? And a couple of things that were brought out already is the local artistry and promoting the culture, but not just like doing the past and the present cultural values of a tribe, promoting physical and mental wellness and even healing, ways to heal from generational and chronic trauma. So those were other complete street strategies that I considered for Indian country, and that were also brought out, not just me, but were brought out in our discussions like previously and then even today. So I was taking notes as we were going along. All right, just for a glimpse of Indian country, and again, usually I have a wider audience, so this just explains what Indian country, what we mean when we say that. So this allows you to, takes the definition from the National Congress of American Indians. And then this is a virtual map tour, and in it is featured different sites across the country, different tribes. Mostly I stuck with the western side of the country, just for sake of brevity, but it starts in Washington State. Let's see if I can zoom in out a little bit so you can, there you go. So this shows you the different locations that this map tour will take you. And as we work through it in the workshop, it was all about like, here's actual images from Indian country across the country, and what does a complete street look like here? So again, the idea is to stir the imagination, and then you can scroll through it. And these are different locations across, even, you know, in Washington and Port Gamble, Skull Alum. So there's 3 different locations within one, you know, tribal area. So again, it in Complete Streets looks different for each one of these. So that was the idea of looking at it more at a micro scale and what does it mean for tribal communities. And then here's the Nez Perce tribe. You can see there's a high school there and the tribal complex. Then we have the Shoshone Paiute tribes, the Duck Valley Reservation. This is crosswalks over in a major highway, but then they also have rural areas where they've got, you know, running buses and dropping kids off. So Complete Streets looks completely different, same reservation, just what do we do for these areas? And then here's the Citizen Potawatomi sidewalk project. This has already been built, but this also allows you to do a little bit of scrolling in and looking at ways to promote the culture. Sorry. And then here's the Pawnee Nation, and this is a walking trail, and there's a bridge over the creek, but you can see that it has the trail. This is facing north, and so to the east, the walking trail makes a large loop, and then there's their health center, where they have like a fitness center and wellness, and then to the west side is their powwow grounds. So they've done a really good job of building this area for their tribal members that provides access and connectivity. And then this is one of those vision, like the Oto Missouri tribe. It is really just one street off the main highway, but there are, you know, walking issues. There's an elder center right here in the corner. You can see that little bridge there, the tribal complex. In the background, you can see to the gray building on the left is their library, cultural center. And then on the right in the very back, that is where their gym is. So they've got a lot of pedestrian activity just in this small space. They also have a lot of, and here you can see it a little better too. They also have a lot of pedestrian activity between their housing, a housing complex and the tribal complex itself. Right. And then last is the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation that we started with, just showing you that, and that, you know, it can be lovely. There is so much to do, and they actually have walking trails. I'm going to zoom out here if you can see that map. You can see the walking trails throughout that in the Buffalo viewing area. But then what happens is that they also have a walking trail, if you can follow my mouse cursor, that goes up to housing complexes and then also to tribal facilities here. Then to wrap up the workshop, we take in just kind of an outline of a tribal community. And you can see it's all grayed out, but I just parceled out the main buildings, the areas, the infrastructure. And then we talk about what would we want to do to increase connectivity. What would Complete Streets look like here, just looking at what we have, what's already in existence. And then we bring in the aerial and we talk about the challenges. So here's, again, another major highway, and we've got the Dollar General store there and people crossing all the time. So that's the idea of it. All right, so using the Complete Streets concepts, what could we do here? What are like, you know, let's just brainstorm. And then this shows you actual pictures of the area that is mapped there. And then lastly, and since most tribes rely on the Tribal Transportation Program for funding, it's like, how can we use the federal funding that's available to tribes for Complete Streets? And so this link takes you to the allowable uses. There's a lot to be explored there. It's more than just building and improving roadways. There's so many options out there. So it's really just worth reading through the CFR and exploring. And then lastly, we ended with just a survey. How can complete streets approach how can the complete streets approach meet tribal transportation needs? So it's just a survey, which you are welcome to take, if you would like. But that is the short version of the presentation, to hopefully get you thinking and just not keep ourselves limited. Let's use our imaginations. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Pamela. It's a really engaging resource. It's an education tool. There's a lot of important cultural and technical information there. So that link will be available with all of the other resources in the shared folder that we're going to create. It'll include all of the slideshows that we've had today. There will also be links to the video recording of this session if you were not able to attend all of it, or if you want to share it with somebody else. We're moving to kind of the final section here of our policy roundtable. I'm going to run through a few slides titled Establishing a National Coalition Focused on Tribal Pedestrian Safety, from Policy Roundtables to a Public Policy Platform. And then we're going to have a final quick breakout session and wrap up by the top of the hour. So this is an idea that we've been batting around in our project team for this grant. We kind of put some first concepts into our grant proposal to the National Safety Council. And these are some general goals that we see for a national coalition. Firstly, to build awareness of the crisis of pedestrian fatalities in Indian country. To create a national community of practice focused on understanding the problem and implementing solutions. And ultimately, to reduce pedestrian fatalities through safer roadway design. But I want to emphasize that these are not set in stone, they're not approved, they are ideas, and we want your ideas as well. And we're going to be asking for your ideas when we get into the breakout groups. So these are just sort of to plant seeds for what might be possible with a group such as this and how we might go about it. So here are the potential specific activities that a group like this might do. Hold more of these policy roundtable gatherings on an annual basis. Establish advisory and interest groups to focus on some of the kind of technical and cultural issues associated with this topic. Create opportunities for members of this national coalition to participate in both virtual and in-person workshops and demonstration projects, such as the one that we already have on the calendar in Pueblo of Jemez, and to develop a public policy platform which we would all get behind and which our organizations would all get behind in order to advocate to the relevant decision-making agencies to make the changes that we want to see. Again, these are just ideas, and I don't want to indicate that this is a final decision. So what might the public policy platform look like? Pamela talked about complete streets, this idea that an overarching framework for our transportation planning and design processes should be that the streets are safe and inviting and accessible for everybody, for all modes of transportation, for pedestrians and bicyclists, for people using mobility devices, people using public transport, people using private cars, as well as for all people and all ages and all abilities. Speed management being a key aspect of the hostility to pedestrians that is experienced in so many of our roadways. The idea of self-enforcing roadways, this is the thought that the way you design a roadway, the width of the lanes, the sight lines, the existence or lack of existence of pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, all determine how quickly drivers will drive their vehicles on those roadways. And we can't just build a roadway that's dead straight and wide and then put up a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit sign and expect people are going to follow that. We need to design the roadways in a way that communicates and enforces the speed that we want people to drive. The safe systems approach, which I believe Sherry talked about earlier, and others, and I know very much embedded in the U.S. Department of Transportation and many organizations on the call today, which says that we have to create safe systems if we want the outcomes of safety, and we can't rely on human beings to make decisions if the system is encouraging the wrong decision. And Vision Zero, that long-term vision of eliminating fatalities on the roadways. And again, this is not a public policy platform that's been discussed or approved. It's just a bunch of ideas. What's the structure and the format of this group going to look like? Well, one possibility is that we will create a small committee and develop a statement of purpose. This is what this group stands for, and we will put it out there into the world of transportation safety and tribal government and advocacy across all our different sectors, and invite people to sign on if they agree with the statement of purpose. That we could have both individual membership and tribal or organizational membership, that we might do quarterly email newsletters and updates and so on to stay in touch with everybody who's part of the group, that we would hold in-person and virtual gatherings to bring everybody together, and that we would create lobby groups once we have a public policy platform. Again, just a draft. And we will need a name. And I'm going to throw a few names up here that Sherry found by entering the general ideas we're talking about into GP chat, I think it's called. So this is artificial intelligence's suggestion for the names of possible names, but we will need a name, and we want you to all kind of contribute to this idea. So we're going to go to small group discussions. I've got some sort of discussion prompts here. I think we might everybody introduce themselves through the chat and in your first round, so don't spend too long on that. This is kind of what the meat of this session. Are there particular programs, public policy approaches, infrastructure designs which you'd like to see implemented more widely? Any success stories? And then what are your thoughts about forming a national coalition and developing a policy platform? Is this something you want to be a part of? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Sherry, Hillary, Holly-Anna, Maya, and Samantha, when Rachel puts up the groups, let's go in the same order. Oh, actually, are we
this one will actually run a little bit differently because we
Yes,
assign.
thank you.
So Ian, you will need to join room 4. Everyone else, when I open rooms, you'll be shuffled off to your room.
So the 6 of us will have the opportunity to choose our room, but everybody else will be automatic.
No, just you, Ian, because you're a co-host. Everybody will
Okay.
go into a room, but you need to do number 4.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
So here we go. We're going to head to our rooms. We have those discussion prompts, and we will loop back in, let's say, 15 minutes, if that's okay, Rachel. Hey, apologies if you got cut off in the middle of a sentence there. That happened in our group, but we do want to finish on time. So there's a lot of energy, a lot of ideas, a lot of opportunities to share. In our group, David Catt gave us a lot of details about the federal Safe Streets for All program and how relatively easy an application that is. And there's a lot of money that can be used for quick build projects and other sorry, I'm trying to turn off text that is coming up in front of me here. Not able to do it, but great opportunities. I'd love to just take a couple of minutes. I think rather than go around the rooms, I'm just going to open up the whole room for anything important. We only have a few minutes that anybody would like to share with the group before we wrap up today, or any questions. So just go ahead and unmute yourself and jump right in if you something you'd like to say, to
I
share.
guess I would just ask that Misha send us those two things that you talked about, Misha, from the federal aspect as well as the state of New Mexico, the conversation that we had. But I know that you're going to send those to us, but I just thought I would ask for that. That's all I was going to say from the last conversation.
Thank you, sisters, and we'll make sure that that is in the shared drive that everybody will have access to. Other final thoughts, pitches, reactions?
Ian, I can jump in and just kind of report from our group that there was quite a lot of interest in the coalition and a few suggestions for policy platforms for the coalition. And so just overall some kind of excitement and looking forward to those next steps. And I did take notes, so I'll be able to kind of share those
Thank you,
back.
Maya. I was going to ask that. Yes, I was sort of scribbling as well. Appreciate that. So we'll huddle next week and make some more firm plans for moving forward. Any other final thoughts? Sherry?
I just wanted to clarify that we're going to be sending out a survey for folks that joined us today to join one of the interest or advisory groups, correct?
Correct, yeah. Probably next week.
Okay.
Hillary, do you have any final thoughts? Pollyanna?
I think we had some great discussion. We have a lot of programs that are doing really well, and interest in the national coalition sounds like from everybody else's standpoint as well. You know, something that came up as a success, it was leveraging funds for art projects and doing imagery. And one project in particular that I felt was really interesting was a roundabout with basket imagery on it. So it might be
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. A roundabout with
basket imagery. So
wow, yeah.
So I will share those notes with you as well.
Great. Pollyanna, you got the last word. And you're muted.
I don't know why it keeps turning itself off. It was doing that earlier too, but no, I don't have any thing else to add. It was, really good to hear the different feedback, especially on wanting to do quick builds because, as you know, I was there for that first time we did a quick build project up at Big Sky, Montana. And so being able to bring that back to Yakima Nation and, getting them to get it more involved in preventive measures was really helpful. And so I think the more that we get to talk to people about best practices with different projects that people work with, I think is going to be really helpful to have on our resource library.
Thank you, Pollyanna. Thank you, everybody. Rachel, if you have the music easily at hand, you could send us off with a bit more of the safety dance. Thank you, everybody. We will be in touch.